On the 1-year mark since our boy passed away, a pair of strangers came up to us right at his gravesite. "We're so grateful you gave away your son's lungs," the lady whispered gently. "They ended up saving our little girl's life." I stood there, stunned, eyes locked on these unfamiliar faces. What on earth are you saying? We'd never agreed to donate Pierce's organs. The pair seemed baffled, and my spouse, Carter, started shaking uncontrollably before he managed to steady himself. "You're not the parents of Pierce Wade," the guy questioned. "We absolutely are," I answered, my words quivering. "But Pierce slipped into brain death on his own during that coma. No donation ever happened." The lady fished out her cell phone. "Except this message says different." She held it up for me to see. It read, "Organ donation approved by Carter Wade, with MD coordinator Dr. Rachel Weinstein." A chill shot through my veins. That was my husband's exact name, and Dr. Weinstein had been the pushy medical consultant who'd hounded us nonstop to approve giving away Pierce's organs. "This can't be true," I muttered as Carter clutched my arm. "She wasn't even treating us. Let's just go," he urged. But the lady persisted, scrolling through her device. "See, it's from Memorial Hospital, the same place where your son and our daughter were treated. And Dr. Weinstein's name is—" "Oh no." Her expression dropped in shock. "Did you have any idea?" I yanked free from Carter's hold and leaned over her screen. There it was, plain as day. Dr. Weinstein, found guilty of illegal organ trading, locked up for 11 years, bribing families with as much as $75,000 to sign off on harvesting organs from coma patients. The quiet hung heavy. She scanned more details, 14 verified instances where Weinstein handed cash to relatives to pull the plug on folks who were starting to bounce back. I faced my husband, whose complexion had drained to white and body was quaking. $75,000, I breathed. "You pocketed $75,000. No response from him. "You ended our son's life for cash." The donor family remained rooted in place, the lady clamping a hand over her lips. "You informed me he was brain dead right when I stepped out for a coffee," I accused, my tone unsteady. "You phoned to warn that Pierce was in crisis. When I returned from the spot nearby, he was fading fast. But you'd already unplugged everything in my absence, right?" My husband avoided my gaze. "Can't you see?" I yelled, hot tears rolling down my cheeks. Leia was only 4 back then. She penned a note to Santa, begging for her sibling's return, and tucked it into a damp envelope that her whole class endorsed. For months, she curled up in his room just to catch his scent. And you let her cling to that, all while knowing you'd traded him for a payout. The receiving dad retreated a step, looking ashen. My God, what about our girl? He took him out. We'd never have accepted if. I pressed on, my words now empty and flat. I got fired from the career I cherished because I fell apart. The home slipped away since I couldn't earn. You claimed the hospital costs wiped us out, yet you sat on $75,000. The revelation hit like a hammer. My sibling covered our house payments for half a year. Mom relocated to care for Leia amid my collapse. They drained their accounts while you hoarded the tainted funds solo. "That boat," I murmured. "You splurged on a shiny new $60,000 vessel just months after Pierce left us. You swore it came from your wealthy relative as a milestone present, but that never occurred. We essentially purchased it with our child's final breath." Carter's cheeks flushed crimson. At least the counseling sessions brought some relief. "Counseling," I interrupted, struggling to remain upright. We scraped by with just 3 meetings in those initial 8 months. We couldn't swing the expense. He stared at the ground. "Then your job upgrade kicked in, letting us cover the sessions," I noted. "And naturally, you show up to everyone these days. You perch there as I break down over that coffee errand. You clasp my fingers when the counselor urges me to absolve myself. You realize, I don't require absolution. You do. Recall your words at the memorial service. I prodded. Carter blanched entirely. You claimed we'd battled for him right to the last. You delivered a talk on standing by him in his darkest hour. Folks hailed you as an exemplary dad, while I became the mom who abandoned post. The pair unraveled before us, the mom now retching. Dr. Namari noted he was progressing. I went on. Our kid gripped my fingers the previous day. The physician assured us he'd emerge from it. His grandma crafted a knit top for the moment he revived. Meanwhile, you guaranteed he'd never don it. Carter shuddered. Leia keeps sketching images for him, I said softly, weakly, to leave it his plot. She wonders if he views them from above. At 6 years old now, she still puzzles over why heaven required her brother more than she ever did. You shattered her early years for $75,000. My folks turned the blame inward, I continued. They believed that if they'd chauffeured that evening, offered us backup, Pierce might have held on stronger. Dad endures heart discomfort from the remorse. Mom relies on pills for her nerves, an entire kin group in ruins, its shining light extinguished. All for your annual paycheck. The pair dashed to their vehicle as I snatched Carter's car key. I pulled the keys from my pocket. Heading back home now. You're not joining me. I grabbed my cell and started punching in numbers. Don't summon the cops, he pleaded. Not doing that, I replied, reaching out to somebody who'd handle this way harsher than any officer. I observed him shudder clearly as I held the device against my ear. Dad! Carter's frame appeared to freeze solid. Yeah, I'm by Pierce's plot, but heading back solo, and Carter desperately wants a lift. My tone stayed eerily steady. Why? You'll hear it out once you arrive. I noticed Carter shaking his head and waving his hands frantically. Can you make it in 20? Great. I remained seated, locking eyes straight on him. I ended the call, and Carter was quivering nonstop. Your old man was an ex-Marine who cherished Pierce beyond anything. I interrupted once more. He'll drive you back, and soon as we're indoors, you'll spill every detail of your actions. I headed to the vehicle. My father has laid men to rest for far lighter offenses than yours. Best of luck. Those 20 minutes dragged on like 2 decades, lingering in the burial ground, eyes fixed on the path, until Dad's dark Ford F-150 swung through the entrance, and even from 50 feet off, I spotted his pale fists clenched on the wheel. Carter started retreating from me, yet there was no escape but straight into the truck now halting by the edge. Dad ignored me entirely. His gaze stayed riveted on Carter via the glass like sighting prey. Carter's posture sagged, and he approached the side door as if marching to his doom, while Dad maintained a rigid expression and waited until Carter knocked on the pane before flipping the lock. The snap echoed like a rifle shot across the quiet graveyard. Carter climbed inside as I pivoted and strode to my ride without glancing behind, since catching Dad's expression right then might have shattered me utterly. My fingers trembled violently in the driver's spot, fumbling the keys twice before slotting them in. I clutched the wheel tightly with both palms just to ease out of the lot. I barely covered 2 miles before veering into a fuel stop, vision hazy from crying, chest squeezed like in a clamp. Parked there, I fired up the voice recorder on my phone to capture it all while vivid, murmuring through the tears over the message the pair displayed. The precise sum of $75,000, each phrase Carter uttered or withheld during my challenge. What began as 10 minutes stretched to 20 with fresh recollections surfacing. The way he seized my wrist, how his face drained of color at the boat reference, how he avoided my gaze amid the chat about Leia's Santa note. I had to swerve aside again just 3 streets from the house as the shakes intensified, and I logged more notes, this round on Dr. Weinstein and the strain she imposed. How Carter handled every solo session with her while I remained by Pierce's side. Upon reaching the place at last, Mom's vehicle sat in the drive, and I glimpsed her via the kitchen glass with Leia at the counter assembling a jigsaw. The everyday scene twisted my gut. I entered via the rear, and Leia leaped into my arms. I sank down and embraced her fiercely, as Mom observed with worry etched clearly. I repeated to Leia how much I adored her maybe 10 times prior to meeting Mom's eyes and signaling she should whisk Leia away overnight. Mom simply agreed, No inquiries, sensing the deep trouble. Leia displayed the jigsaw bit she'd spotted resembling a moth, and I praised her cleverness as Mom packed the sleepover kit. Within 15 minutes, they departed, leaving the home hushed. That evening, I booted up my notebook and located the clip my relative shared on Facebook from Pierce's service. Right there stood Carter behind the lectern in his dark attire, speaking of our relentless battle for our boy to the finish. His delivery rang firm and resolute as he claimed we'd both shown up when Pierce required us urgently, forcing me to dash to the toilet to retch upon his words about the holy obligation of guardians to shield their kids. Returning, I replayed it thrice over, each pass churning my stomach more while spotting overlooked details. The repeated tie tugs when he referenced the clinic stay, and the hitch in his tone, not sorrow, but another emotion, declaring Pierce's passing held purpose. The footage drew more than 200 remarks lauding Carter as courageous and resilient, hailing us as exemplary caregivers. I captured each one as images, aware these folks would soon uncover the reality. I accessed our digital accounts and scanned records from 2 years back, hunting for substantial inflows post Pierce's demise. And it appeared on the display, chilling my veins anew. 3 distinct $25,000 cash infusions spread across 2 weeks following Pierce's end, each labeled a present in the notes. And I remember Carter mentioning how his cousin pitched in for the burial costs. It struck me as strange that Carter kept having those one-on-one sessions with the physician, while the mom hung back with Pierce. It was consistently him dealing with those confidential talks. The moment he lunged to seize her wrist and halt the discussion, after I pulled up all the bank records from that time and spotted those additional minor cash inflows, $5,000 in one spot, $3,000 in another, each just shy of the threshold that triggers reports, and every entry with fuzzy explanations. That marine dealer's site still showed the completed transaction buried in Google searches. When I tapped it, the precise buy date popped up, 32 days post Pierce's passing, with a cash price tag of $58,000. I captured screen grabs of it all, forwarded them to 3 separate email accounts of mine, uploaded to cloud storage, ran off hard copies, and stashed them in a file tucked away in the garage, concealed behind outdated cans of paint. I fired off a detailed message to my sibling detailing the whole cemetery incident, and she shot back right away that she was heading over and to hold off on any moves till she arrived. She pulled up 40 minutes later, armed with her computer, a pack of Kleenex, and an expression I'd never witnessed on her, a fierce determination like she'd raze everything in sight. We hunkered down at the kitchen counter as she guided me in, piecing together a chronological outline, all while I wept and muttered that she'd sensed something shady with the vessel and the abrupt cash influx. And why hadn't she pressed harder? Come morning, I dialed the records office at Memorial Hospital, requesting every file on Pierce's treatment. The staffer informed me it had required 2 weeks to compile, but once I mentioned potential litigation, she paused the line. A manager jumped in and offered to rush it to 3 days for a surcharge. I recited my card details as my sister perched beside me, scribbling down their every utterance. Once off the call, I rang our counselor's practice and voiced a plea for an urgent solo appointment, minus Carter. My tone broke as I described the significant breakthrough tied to Pierce's demise. The front desk got back to me within the hour, noting Dr. Martinez had an opening the following day at 7 a.m., prior to her standard schedule, and I noted it with trembling fingers. That evening, I headed to Mom's place to look in on Leia, forcing a cheerful tone when she dashed over to display her latest sketch for Pierce, a vibrant arc of colors pierced by soaring birds. She wondered if Pice could spot rainbows up in the afterlife, and I assured her he surely could, as Mom observed from the threshold with anxious glances, prompting me to slip away to the lavatory, where I muffled my tears into a handcloth to spare Leia the sound. Deep into the night, once Leia had drifted off at Mom's, I unrolled a large sheet of poster paper over the dining surface and started charting it all. I jotted Pierce's entry date into the hospital at the far left and sketched a timeline stretching rightward. Each clinic appearance got marked with assorted hues of pens: blue for joint appearances by Carter and me, red for Carter's solo time with Pierce, green for each outreach from that staffer on organ procurement. Those crimson spots bunched up densely in the last 7 days, resembling bloodstains on the page. My fingers ached from clutching the pen too fiercely as the scheme sharpened into focus. Carter had spent a full 3 hours by himself with Pierce the day prior to his end. 3 solid hours, during which I'd been at home laundering outfits and settling accounts. The chime sounded at 7 the following dawn, and there stood Dad, his mouth set in a rigid line that seemed liable to shatter his molars. He enveloped me in an embrace like a shield, and declared he'd manage all interactions with Carter going forward. I presented the sequence to him and observed his complexion shift from flushed to pale to ashen. He snapped photos of the display via his cell and mentioned securing duplicates in his lockbox. A bit later that forenoon, I ended up searching Dr. Weinstein's identity online, scrolling through result after result. A piece from 2 years back halted my breath. 14 relatives had stepped up regarding their kin, who perished following Weinstein's persuasion to withdraw vital support. The story included a hyperlink to a secluded Facebook community for those groups, and my pointer lingered above it for a solid 10 minutes before I selected it. My cell buzzed amid the accounts I was scanning, and seeing the facility's digits sent my gut plummeting. The compliance officer greeted with that artificial empathy tone folks deploy amid liability fears. She vowed to investigate my issues firsthand and stressed how gravely the institution regarded such issues. Her scripted phrasing signaled attorneys were already looped in. I ended the connection queasy. An hour on, Dad messaged with merely 4 terms. Carter appeared at the door, followed by another update with fuller info. He'd made Carter wait outside on the steps, treated like a peddler hawking wares, and spill the full tale. Carter owned up to inking the documents during my coffee shop stop. Dad Carter mentioned that he bawled like an infant, yet it didn't faze him one bit. Come morning, I found myself in Dr. Martinez's office at 7 a.m., my fingers trembling as they rested in my lap. She heard my entire story without a single interruption before passing me the card of a lawyer specializing in victims' rights. She stressed that none of this was on me, and that the pain I was enduring was genuine trauma. That reassurance hit me so hard, I sobbed more fiercely than I had in months. Once the appointment wrapped up, I headed right to the bank to request duplicates of all our account statements from the time Pierce passed away. The bank clerk began retrieving them on her screen and casually noted how deposits exceeding $10,000 get flagged right away. She compiled it all and sealed it in a hefty manila folder that seemed to carry the weight of 100 pounds. That evening, as I prepared supper, an email notification chimed on my phone from a woman called Margaret. Her boy had been among Weinstein's victims back 3 years prior. She extended an invitation to join her support group's gathering the following week and cautioned that the court proceedings would drag on endlessly. She added that enduring the delays felt nearly as devastating as the disloyalty itself. I was poring over her message for the 3rd go-around when my cell buzzed with a call from Leia's school. The teacher's tone was cautious and worried as she described how Leia had sketched hospital scenes during art class. She'd also been sharing with classmates that her father was awful and had committed a terrible act. My heart clenched tight while I arranged a session with the school counselor for the following day. I had to find a way to guide my girl through this horror without utterly ruining her bond with her dad. 3 days on, a bulky packet from the hospital landed with Pierce's full medical files. I laid out the documents on my kitchen table, hands quivering. On page 47, the precise moment life support ended was listed, 2:53 p.m. on March 15th. My cafe coffee receipt bore a timestamp of 2:48 p.m. Carter had claimed to everyone that Pierce was officially brain dead at 3:55 p.m. The deception stared back at me in the stark print of the official records. He'd unplugged the lines while I strolled back with my foolish brew, then held off contacting me for a full 60 minutes. An entire hour by our fading boy's side, fully aware of his actions. I snapped images of each sheet and forwarded them to my own inbox, my sister's, and the attorney Dr. Martinez suggested. The proof was stacking up around Carter's throat like heavy rocks, and I intended to ensure it pulled him under. The following morning, I reviewed our past phone records digitally, something I'd never double-checked since Carter managed the finances. The detailed logs revealed every outgoing call from his line, and sure enough, there were 3 to an unfamiliar number on March 14th, just before Pierce's death. I punched the digits into a search engine, and my gut twisted when it linked to Weinstein's medical advisory firm. The initial one hit at 9 a.m. and ran 23 minutes. The next at midday for 19 minutes. The last at 4:30 p.m., clocking in at 27 minutes. I captured screenshots of it all and stashed them across 3 separate cloud storages. My palms shook as I hunted for online news pieces from Pierce's hospital stay. The top hits focused on the crash that landed him in a coma. But deeper in, on the 4th results page, an item from our hometown paper dated March 13th caught my eye. Its title covered upgrades at the facility, yet tucked inside was a statement that left me breathless. Dr. Namari had shared with the journalist that multiple coma cases at Memorial were displaying promising brain function recoveries and could rouse soon, possibly in weeks. No names were mentioned, but the date aligned perfectly. 2 days prior to Carter pulling Pierce's plugs. I ran off 20 duplicates of the piece and marked Namari's words in yellow highlighter on every single one. Later that day, Dad pulled up to the house bearing the phone logs I'd sent him. His expression was icy as he headed directly to Carter's place without a word to me about his plans. 2 hours afterward, Dad messaged that Carter owned up to taking the cash, but insisted he figured Pierce was beyond saving regardless. Dad noted how Carter wept uncontrollably and pleaded with him to keep the admission from me, though Dad had captured the whole exchange on his device. As I absorbed Dad's update, my phone buzzed with a text from an unidentified sender. The receiving mom must have obtained my contact somehow and was reaching out to chat, explaining her child survived thanks to Pierce, but she was tormented by profiting from Carter's deed. I stared at her words for a solid 10 minutes, before replying that I'd mull it over. 3 days afterward, I was in the office of a victim's rights attorney suggested by the support circle. She examined my stack of evidence and outlined how pressing criminal charges against Carter was improbable, since establishing motive would prove extraordinarily tough. She advised pursuing a civil suit as the stronger option, though it could span years and yield limited outcomes. She urged me to keep collecting proof and recording every detail is crucial, since you can't predict what will surface. What prompted Carter to dial Weinstein's office 3 times on the day prior to Pierce's passing? What topics kept them on the line for roughly 20 minutes per call? That newspaper piece on recovering patients popped up at a suspiciously opportune moment for anyone eager to rush a call on life support. A week later, an envelope from the district attorney's office landed in my mailbox, containing a duplicate of Weinstein's plea deal testimony. Line by line, it revealed her confession to preying on families of stabilizing patients because they were simpler to sway. She outlined her precise routine for dealing with relatives when a partner wasn't around. She owned up to misleading families by claiming their relatives had zero hope, despite records indicating otherwise. Seeing her statements hit me like a fresh stab to the heart. The bank manager reached out directly, mentioning he'd uncovered additional records on Carter's deposits. His official letter verified that the cash sums were swiftly turned into cashier's checks and transferred straight to the Marine Dreams yacht outlet. The trail of transactions was so straightforward that anyone could trace the funds from Pierce's demise right to Carter's flashy purchase. I headed to our former home, where Carter was crashing short-term, and insisted he authorize the financial restriction order I'd prepared. Dad idled in his pickup in the driveway, engine humming, to remind Carter of his presence. Carter's fingers shook as he scrawled his name on the documents without glancing at them. He kept glancing toward Dad's vehicle and soaking his shirt with sweat. Our initial support group session took place in the lower level of a city center chapel, and I nearly backed out 3 times before stepping inside. 7 fellow parents formed a ring, and during my sharing moment, a different mom started sobbing midway through my words. She revealed that Weinstein had fed her family the identical lines about her girl lacking any worthwhile existence. She mentioned Weinstein spinning the same falsehood about other relatives appreciating the organ donation opportunity. We were all casualties of a rehearsed routine from a fiend cloaked in a lab coat. That evening, I recalled our shared tablet for shopping notes and household matters. I powered it up after months of neglect and scanned Carter's texts. Right there, in a message to his sibling 2 months post Pierce's death, was a snapshot of the vessel, with Carter boasting about its savvy buy. His brother responded, questioning how they managed the expense. Carter replied that a job perk and a bargain made it possible, uttering nothing about the true origin of the funds. I captured screenshots of those exchanges as well and tucked them into my expanding dossier of proof, guaranteeing that all would see Carter's true character. Come morning, I phoned Child Protective Services from my vehicle in a lot near their building. My grip trembled as I detailed how Carter had ended our boy's life for profit. The caseworker stayed quiet, jotting notes as I described safeguarding Leia from a dad who traded her sibling's future. She advised logging all details and recommended seeking urgent custody with monitored visits. I scribbled her every suggestion and requested she forward the required documents via email. She noted that proof of monetary abuse and healthcare deception would probably speed up the court's interim rulings. I completed the forms on the spot in my car, propping them on the dash. My sibling messaged that while sifting through vintage pictures, she'd spotted something strange in Carter's digital planner from 2 years back. She forwarded an image of an appointment with an individual listed as RW Patient Advocate. It aligned precisely with the evening Carter said his breakdown began. The coincidence was too neat to dismiss. RW clearly stood for Rachel Weinstein. My sister persisted and unearthed 3 additional sessions in the lead-up to Pierce's death. All were flagged confidential and timed for my work shifts or outings. The hospital's attorneys contacted me that day, proposing $25,000 in exchange for signing an agreement to stay silent on the events. The attorney's tone was polished and routine as he framed it as a compassionate move to aid our recovery. I informed him that keeping quiet enabled Weinstein to victimize 14 households and ended the call. He rang again right away, raising the bid to $50,000. I blocked his contact. That evening, my cell buzzed with a message from Dr. Namari, silent since Pierce's end. His tone cracked as he mentioned poring over Pierce's records amid news of the probe. He verified urging a delay of at least 7 more days prior to any life support verdict. Pierce's neural patterns were progressing, showing hints of reaction that recovery seemed feasible according to him. He mentioned sharing that straight with Carter, yet Carter maintained that Pierce wouldn't desire such an existence. Namari's tone broke as he expressed regret for not pressing the issue more forcefully, adding that he'd provide testimony if required. I backed up the voicemail across 3 separate spots and noted down each detail verbatim. My attorney moved swiftly, dispatching retention notices to the medical center and Carter's counsel, requiring them to safeguard all documentation and exchanges. She clarified that these would prevent any tampering with proof and impose penalties should items vanish. The notices were dispatched via registered post and electronic mail to confirm receipt. Additionally, she submitted demands for disclosure on all files concerning Pierce's treatment and Weinstein's role. The judicial process dragged on, yet progress was evident. 2 days afterward, Carter's supervisor reached out to inquire whether the claims held water, since Carter had named me as his crisis contact. I outlined the ongoing probe and the proof we'd uncovered within an hour. Carter faced immediate suspension while his firm's moral committee reviewed the matter. He bombarded me with 17 messages pleading for a discussion, but I stayed silent. Dad urged me to remain resolute and avoid handing him material to twist against me. The following week, we convened at Denny's, our attorneys present like impartial overseers. Carter appeared exhausted, with shadows beneath his eyes and attire that didn't match. His counsel handled the bulk of the dialogue as Carter fixated on his fingers. At last, Carter contributed, confessing his dread of forfeiting the home amid Pierce's illness. He revealed that Weinstein persuaded him Pierce's vital organs might benefit other children, rendering his passing purposeful at minimum. He asserted believing Pierce had already departed cognitively, despite the physician's contrary view. His attorney signaled him to cease by touching his arm, but Carter persisted. He described the funds as tainted, though essential for Leia's prospects. I itched to splash my drink his way, yet my attorney steadied my arm discreetly below the surface. That evening, I uncovered Leia's note to Santa and the memento container tucked in my wardrobe. Her wobbly script at age 4 remained legible, pleading for Pierce's return. Faint smudges from dried tears distorted the colored lines. I lingered on my chamber's rug, poring over it repeatedly until realization dawned. There was no cause for self-pardon regarding the coffee run. I bore no fault. Carter alone sought absolution, which I refused to grant. The full health files arrived via messenger 3 days on, packed in 2 executive crates. My attorney and I devoted 6 hours scrutinizing each sheet with markers and tabs. There, starkly evident on sheet 847, Weinstein had logged the approval as secured with both guardians in attendance, while the log indicated I was ringing up purchases at the cafeteria's till for coffee. The falsification stood out so blatantly that my attorney chuckled outright. She noted this single discrepancy might extend Weinstein's incarceration and dismantle whatever shield Carter attempted to erect. We produced vibrant duplicates of the lot and secured them in 3 distinct sites. Dad visited that Saturday and assisted in configuring a capture tool on my device to auto-upload to the web. He demonstrated swift activation and optimal device placement for crisp sound. We rehearsed various situations, such as Carter arriving at the residence or nearing me openly. Dad emphasized that forging an unassailable dossier involved preparedness for surprises and logging each encounter. He acquired a compact recorder for my vehicle and aided its mounting for footage. Should Carter attempt an encounter in the lot, we were erecting a barrier of substantiation to shield Leia and guarantee true reckoning this round. 3 weeks on, the facility's juridical staff contacted my attorney with a fresh proposal, now at $200,000 sans confidentiality clause. My attorney laid out the documents over her boardroom surface, highlighting clauses as I struggled to concentrate. The sum could lock in Leia's higher education savings and counseling into her teens. My fingers trembled, clutching the stylus above the endorsement mark. Accepting their payout resembled permitting evasion of responsibility through cash. Yet observing my child falter academically due to unaffordable specialist support stung deeper. I set the stylus aside and requested 2 days for reflection. That very afternoon, a journalist from the community paper phoned to ask if I'd add to her feature on Weinstein's affected kin. She mentioned 12 additional households had contributed tales incognito. I encountered her at a downtown cafe, where she displayed preliminary pieces from the others. One parent recounted unearthing her spouse's hidden finances, half a year post their boy's demise. Another clan learned the reality upon Weinstein's detention, as their clinical files served as exhibits. I devoted 3 hours recounting it all as she keyed into her portable. She showed me the article draft right before submitting it, altering specifics to shield our privacy while retaining the $75,000 sum and the boat acquisition. Reading our ordeal laid out so starkly turned my gut inside out. Just 2 days on, it hit the front page under the banner, "The Cost of Faith." My cell buzzed endlessly with messages from folks who pieced together our saga, even with the swapped identities. Pierce's neural function was genuinely advancing. Dr. Namari reported that Carter had confided to the physician how Pierce wouldn't wish to endure in that condition. It left me pondering what truly occupied Carter's mind amid those clandestine sessions with Weinstein prior to the incident. That very evening, the adopting mother fired off an email packed with 3 pages of remorse and a pledge to give testimony on the cemetery scene they observed. She included research papers indicating that Pierce's pattern of brain response frequently resulted in improvement. Her little girl was thriving, yet burdened by the weight of survivor's remorse, aware that one child's passing had paved the way for hers. They expressed eagerness to support our campaign for better hospital regulations. I ran off a hard copy of the message and slotted it into my file of proofs. Come morning, I headed to the courthouse to initiate the separation proceedings. The clerk piled form after form into my arms as she outlined the steps for the custody review. I sought court-monitored visits for Carter and exclusive authority over health and schooling choices. The submission cost drained my bank balance, though Dad slipped me a check without a word from me. A week later, papers were delivered to Carter at his place, prompting 17 frantic calls to the landline. I ignored them all and preserved the voicemail log capturing his distress. With my attorney's guidance, I crafted an official parenting plan, allotting him alternate weekends under official oversight. Midway through the 2-week split timeline, Carter's counsel passed along his sworn statement to ours. In it, he asserted that Weinstein had assured him Pierce qualified as brain dead with slim odds of rebound, though the scans I'd compiled revealed steady neural progress right up to his passing. The statement further noted, I gave verbal consent to the choice just before stepping out for a coffee. My lawyer burst into chuckles at that line. Given the video feed depicting me heading solo to the spot, tears streaming, she marked each inconsistency and filed it to demonstrate ongoing deceit. Via my public records bid, I at last secured the facility's internal review from Pierce's fatal year. This 50-page dossier outlined 6 grievances regarding Weinstein's tactics to sway relatives, predating any probe into crimes. Officials convened thrice to address her pushy approach to patient support, yet implemented 0 measures. A single sheet revealed her organ procurement totals, outstripped every other specialist statewide. The institution's moral committee had tagged her figures as improbably high, sans pressure tactics. I duplicated it 5-fold and forwarded one to the journalist. That Saturday, with Leah over at my mother's, I positioned my device to capture a video note. In Pierce's former bedroom, I addressed the lens for a solid hour, recounting the full saga. I detailed my fierce quest for honesty and the reason I could no longer share a life with the man who ended her siblings. I displayed his infant pictures and the card he'd crafted for Mother's Day the prior year. The footage went onto a USB stick, which I stashed in my vault for Leia's 18th. The sworn questioning came quicker than anticipated. I donned my sole business outfit and hauled along 3 binders of sorted materials. The facility's counsel perched opposite on the huge desk, appearing uneasy. I steadily laid out the sequence, displaying each paper and clarifying its significance. On queries about my mindset, I recounted learning amid gravestones that my spouse had bartered our boy's existence. Their top counsel repeatedly glanced at his gadget and murmured to his partner. Following 4 hours, they called a break and raised no challenges to my document offerings. Carter's turn the subsequent day unfolded just as my counsel foresaw. The stenographer later shared with her that she'd rarely witnessed such repeated self-conflicts. Pressed on his eulogy, where he insisted we'd battled to the last, Carter dissolved into tears. He confessed to rehearsing those words for days, fully aware he'd severed the connections during my absence. Regarding the $75,000, he initially rejected it, then lowballed the figure, and ultimately owned the entire payout. His attorney attempted constant diversions, but Carter kept pouring out words. He revealed the remorse was devouring him and voiced a desire to perish. The medical team's attorneys traded anxious looks as he disclosed Weinstein's 6 calls that week of Pierce's demise. A month post-sworn accounts, the prosecutor's team issued a notice refusing to pursue indictments. They pointed to lacking proof of willful crime and the expired window for deception claims. I wasn't shocked when Carter's attorney probably secured a deal for immunity by flipping on the hospital. The lawsuit would press on anyway. Our attorney assured us the proof we had could shatter the facility's image, criminal prosecution or not. 3 weeks on, he launched the civil suit against Memorial Hospital in Carter, linking up with 14 other affected families ensnared in the fraud. The firm's meeting room overflowed with moms and dads clutching tissue packs and hefty stacks of health files. Each group shared their ordeal, and it hit me that our pain wasn't the deepest cut. A mom grieved the loss of her twins after her spouse pocketed $100,000. One dad took his own life upon uncovering his actions. The Maine lawyer outlined how our collective evidence might drive the hospital into ruin, prompting their insurer to eagerly pursue a resolution. Come Monday, I started EMDR sessions since standard counseling couldn't pierce the hurt. The counselor waved her fingers side to side as I relived the cemetery revelation. And oddly, my mind started handling it anew. That initial appointment drained me, yet a change stirred. I managed a full 8 hours of sleep that evening, free from jolting awake yelling Pierce's name. The night terrors lingered but morphed, no longer replaying the gravesite horror, just ordinary frights. My tension eased, no longer wired for danger. Just 2 days post-divorce filing, the court locked down all shared property. Carter's counsel claimed the boat was a relative's present, but my financial logs exposed the money trails and transfers. The judge's face twisted in revulsion, scanning the docs, then mandated the vessel's prompt auction. Carter watched his $60,000 plaything get seized, the very one he'd flaunted online while I arranged Pierce's burial. When the repo team arrived at the dock, they alerted me about leftover belongings, including Pierce's worn flotation jacket, which Carter had hoarded like a twisted memento. I linked up with the organ recipient's mom at a city cafe. Following weeks of messages, she arrived with a scrapbook of her kid, vibrant and kicking a ball on the field. The child, bearer of Pierce's liver, had blossomed after years, bedridden in care. A piece of me ached to resent her, but it was impossible. She bore no fault. Tears streamed as her mom revealed they would have rejected the donation had they known of Carter's bribe. She revealed a note of gratitude from her daughter to us, withheld once the scam surfaced. We lingered over images and tales for 3 hours. 2 women bound by unimaginable loss. Once our attorney warned of exposing the 14 stories publicly, the hospital's payout soared from $50,000 to $500,000. It covered Leia's counseling through age 21, along with my sessions. Counsel suggested we might squeeze more by digging in, but exhaustion won out. Fellow victims were inking deals too, all craving closure. After a couple weeks of haggling, I greenlit the agreement but balked at any hush clause on Pierce. They pushed for secrecy as a term, yet I stood unyielding. Certain fights outweigh cash, and Pierce's truth demanded air. The hospital relented, seeing I'd forfeited all rather than mute. Carter relocated to a modest flat across the city, and we switched to a co-parenting tool named Talking Parents that logs every exchange. No casual chats or notes he could twist down the line, each word time-stamped and stored. He dialed me once, but I ignored it and reinforced our protocol via the app. His opening note rambled in apology across 3 blocks, but I only acknowledged Leia's schedule handoffs. Our initial handover occurred in the cop shop lot, per my lawyer's call for a surveilled spot. Leia puzzled over skipping the house meetup, though the routine soothed her. Carter appeared wrecked, bags under eyes, pounds shed, but I registered zero emotion. He offered a sealed packet, but I directed him to our designated drop bin. The watching cop gave a thumbs up as I drove off. 2 months in at the Survivor Circle, I shared without self-reproach over that coffee run. I described Pierce's grip on my fingers and Carter yanking the tubes in my brief absence. The group got it instantly. A father noted, "Not being there isn't disloyalty." Heads bobbed in agreement. A mom with a parallel betrayal added, "Letting go of our flaws as people doesn't mean excusing evil." Dad visited that weekend. Over the weekend, my father reached out and expressed regret for his urge to harm Carter at the gravesite. He explained that nightmares involving Pierce had made him see that aggression couldn't resurrect him. We decided to channel our energy into safeguarding Leia and ensuring Pierce's experience supported other grieving households. My dad kicked off a remembrance chest alongside Leia, stuffing it with Pierce's beloved items and tales from his life. My mother contributed by outputting every snapshot from prior to that awful incident. Our Sunday sessions involved collaborating on it as a family, with Leia sketching fresh illustrations to include. Yet the 1-year mark of Pierce's passing arrived abruptly, so we observed it quietly. Just mom, dad, my sibling, Leia, and myself, at the burial ground. That prosecutor's note dropping charges feels suspiciously timed to benefit the medical center. Dropping the case just as Carter prepares to give evidence against them raises questions about secret dealings we're not privy to, particularly since 14 households share comparable accounts involving the identical coordinator. Carter got no invite and didn't request entry via the platform. I carried the sweater his grandma had crafted prior to her death, featuring dinosaurs that Pierce would have adored, and packaged it in wrapping paper to place at his marker. Leia positioned her latest artwork beside it, depicting Pice kicking a ball around in the afterlife, while Dad kept clearing his throat and Mom gripped my fingers tightly. We didn't linger since Leia started shivering. As we departed, I laid my hand on the headstone and whispered to Pierce that I grasped the reality. The following week, the charity contacted me regarding a temporary role aiding parents bereft of their kids. Despite the wages being only half my prior income, I accepted on the spot. Returning to employment after so much time off felt odd. Still, the fellow caregivers there got why I required a quick break in the restroom to steady my nerves. Finances strained with the reduced earnings, though the compensation funds handled Leia's counseling sessions and our essentials. I began packing meals from the kitchen and axed the subscription channels Carter had added using his tainted funds. The shared custody tool turned into our sole channel for exchanges, with each note logged complete with timestamps. When Carter messaged me off-app concerning Leia's performance at school, I captured the screen and directed him back to the protocol via the system. His monitored outings occurred bi-weekly on Saturdays at the local hub, overseen by a counselor as they engaged in tabletop activities. Leia puzzled over why her father couldn't escort her to the playground solo any longer, yet she settled into the altered schedule. Half a year following our cemetery visit, I could finally recall Pierce without that suffocating pressure in my torso. His passing wasn't merely a heartbreaking mishap or divine intent, as folks droned on during the memorial. It stemmed from disloyalty by the individual sworn to shield him. Voicing that distinction in sessions proved more healing than 2 years of self-reproach for stepping out for a latte. The remorse lingered, but it relocated to its rightful target. Leia commenced interactive counseling with an expert in young bereavement. 3 months in, she ceased illustrating medical facilities in all her sketches. Her counselor guided her in crafting an emotions diary, allowing her to pen notes to Pierce centered on joyful recollections rather than solely sorrowful ones. She described the occasion he coached her on biking and the instance they erected a shelter amid a downpour. Now her illustrations portrayed Pierce in cheerful pursuits, such as savoring frozen treats or romping with their former pup, rather than confined to a sickbed. Within the assistance circle, 5 of us, parents of kids ensnared by the identical plot, started consulting an attorney on medical facility regulations. We dedicated Tuesday evenings to scrutinizing guidelines and operations, highlighting each lapse that doomed our children. 90 days on, we delivered our proposed fixes to the facility's directors, and they paid attention since their legal team recognized the potential for widespread exposure. The updated measures we influenced demanded dual approvals from separate physicians for terminal choices and banned monetary rewards tied to tissue harvesting. My sister connected me with a fellow from her fitness spot who'd endured his spouse's passing from malignancy 3 years back. Our initial encounter was over beverages, and he remained composed as I recounted the saga with Carter and Pierce. He simply acknowledged it and remarked, "Reconstructing faith requires patience." He comprehended my habit of glancing at my device obsessively on early outings to confirm Leia was fine with the babysitter. 2 months along, I permitted him to encounter Leia at the play area, and she warmed to how he propelled her skyward on the swings unprompted. He avoided positioning himself as her parent, opting instead to be an acquaintance familiar with her mother, which simplified matters greatly. Existence started seeming viable once more, despite diverging entirely from the future I envisioned with Pice present. Certain dawns, I stirred without the loss slamming into me right away. Then the self-reproach would surge for that fleeting lapse. But Leia giggled with more genuine exuberance these days, deep chuckles as she viewed Cardo when she goofed around with buddies. Not those stiff grins from the early days. Every now and then, I'd spot traces of Pierce in the look on her face, like the way she'd scrunch up her nose while focusing hard, or the tilt of her head as she posed a question. Those instances stung deeply, yet they came across as precious treasures. Bits and pieces of him lingering right there in his sibling. The revival I begged for in my prayers didn't happen. But watching Pierce endure via Leia's chuckles meant far more than any divine wonder could.